6 and 7. Today we're going to talk about situational awareness, our second class that's focusing on senses. Our references for today are TC 3-22.69, Advanced Situational Awareness, and TC 3-21.76, Ranger Handbook. But first, story time. So in 2015, right before our deployment to Afghanistan, we had MOUT training. MOUT meaning military, operations, urban terrain. So we were going house to house doing all that fun stuff. So me and my squad went into this building. We were getting our HVTs, our high value targets. We were, clearing, fulfilling our mission when I heard a ding, 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 on the ground. I look down and I see a canister billowing out yellow smoke. And then I hear my squad mates yell, gas, 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 gas. Oh no. So I reach down into my pouch, throw on my gas mask, clear it. I can breathe. I can't smell anything. That's great. Unfortunately for my friend, he could smell and taste something. And it was the CS gas, the tear gas.
So he did not clear his mask properly.
No. Went running, leaving a trail of, all of his gear, saw his helmet, his mask, everything. My squad leader found me. He's yelling and cursing at him, and I'm crying. I'm laughing so hard. That
was great too.
That really just, encapsulates that day for me.
Yeah. It was funny for me too, because I was on the other end down the road from you, and I never smelled. Well, I smelled the gas a little bit, so I could tell that something was going on. But we had just gotten done getting simulated grenaded.
Nice. Yep.
And we cleared that building, and we were sitting in a ditch when we heard someone screaming gas. And then the next thing I saw was coming running down the road, like snot pouring from his nose, tears coming from his eyes. He didn't have any of his stuff, which was the funniest part. I'm like, what the hell just happened?
So if no one's been, hit with CS gas before, it's a great experience and you should try it. What happens
100%.
is it attacks your respiratory system, right? It's an irritant. So, basically your nose, running, it's just like you can't breathe right. Your eyes are crying. You can't see, you can't breathe, you can't smell. Also, your skin starts to burn because it's an irritant. Very not good stuff, especially if you don't clear your mask properly. So I could still see, I could still breathe, I could still do what I had to do. But like on my neck, the collar on my neck where skin was exposed, around my wrist where I didn't have my gloves or my cuff covering, just started, to burn like CS gas. It's kind of hard to explain when you haven't felt it before. But we do that. And my squad leader, go get I'm like, okay, fine. And I try to find him, and I just follow this little breadcrumb of all his gear. He threw his saw. He threw his helmet. He's like lying on the ground, like, with his hands in his face, like crying. Today we're continuing on with situational awareness. Like we talked about last episode, guys, there is so much information in that FM to cover. I focus primarily on the senses. So first sense we're going to talk about is your sense of sight. Sight is the sense that we use primarily throughout the day, and it is an incredible resource when you have it. It can be an incredible detriment when you don't.
Oh, it's absolutely crippling. If you don't have sight, like, it is freaking crippling. So for anyone who has experienced this, if you wear glasses with a pretty high prescription or a pretty low prescription, depending on if you're nearsighted or farsighted, and you take your glasses off, how crippling is it? Can you drive? Probably not. At least not very well. It's hard to even use your depth perception because you can't tell. Everything's a blur.
Right. So I wear glasses, right? And I wear contacts. So if I don't have my glass or contacts, it literally looks like I'm trying to see underwater. So
yeah.
So over time, my body, has naturally, my mind has naturally built up that kind of database of experience. Like, I can look at something without my glasses and think, okay, that's a water bottle. Okay, that's a pen. Okay, that's just because, I've memorized what it looks like when I can see with my glasses. and so that carries over. But if I were to just not, if I had to go into a situation where I had to like do soldering tasks or like get positive identification, I wouldn't be able to do that. You know, that is a huge detriment. So without getting into the actual physiology of how all of this works, I think it's interesting. I'd love to do a blog post or a write-up or a guide or something on this later if y'all would be interested in that. But we're really trying to just narrow down and really filter out all that stuff to what you can apply right now and just give you the overall grasp of the concept. So your eyes perform differently in different light situations. So when light is available, so during the daytime, if you have a light on in your building, home, room, whatever, your eyes primarily focus on differentiating different colors, recognizing shapes, and spotting contrast. By contrast, I mean something that is different from the environment. So if you drop your phone on the ground, the slim metallic or slim glass texture of that phone is going to differ from the grass. All right, that's contrast. When there is not light available, your body is designed to capture the available light that is there. That can take time. That can take time for you to get, the quote unquote night vision that your body will naturally produce. But during that time, your eyes will primarily focus on detecting movement, and you'll have to rely mostly on your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
And of course, with the night vision, I'm primarily talking about blacks and whites. So your eyes do not take in enough light to differentiate color, really. So at night, you're going to see mostly blacks and whites. Six, you want to talk about seeing in dark conditions?
When you're faced with operating, walking, whatever in the dark, there's a lot of things that you should probably know about this. The first being after your eyes have adjusted to the low light levels, if you're exposed to like a flashlight or headlights or a street light, whatever a bright light source, it can take up to 45 minutes for your vision to recover to where you're fully seeing in bright light or back into low light. When you're dealing with dark conditions, you're also having to combat reduced depth perception because you can't really tell how far away something is in the dark.
Or tell as well.
Yeah. And I know this for a fact as many times as I've operated under night vision goggles, or I guess night vision optics.
So were you an operator?
Out of the many times that we used our nods, our night optical devices, stumbling around in the dark is not fun. 90% of the time, I had the thing down. I didn't even have it on because I could see better without the thing on than with it on, because just that bright light shining into my eye, one eye, was a pain in the ass. Because even with the nods down, you still had even more reduced depth perception. It's hard to explain unless you've actually seen them. It's not like Call of Duty. It's not. Like Call of Duty, they basically just took, the regular daylight vision and just turned it all green. That's not how it looks. It's so grainy.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit, that difference that you're talking about with having one eye with your nods on and one without, when you're looking through at least the 14s, the PVS 14s that we had, they were slightly zoomed in.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you like you said, you didn't have that good depth perception, but only on that one side, and your eyes will naturally try to equal out. So if you weren't careful to focus just on that eye or close one eye or however you're going to do it right, that color, that green hue could actually bleach into that other eye. Your depth perception get really screwy because one eye was natural depth perception at light, the other one was magnified slightly. So until you got used to it, until you adapted to that, it could be very difficult to get around.
And it's just annoying. So also when you're in the dark, if you stare directly at something, it's gonna get bleached out. Like it's just gonna go. completely dark. It's, I don't even know what the phenomenon's called, but just try it. Like,
I think it's just called bleaching out. Your eyes aren't designed to focus directly on something at night.
But if you want to try it, like go into a dark room, or mostly dark, or go out at night, and try looking directly at an object, whether you have like a dog outside, or a cat, or a cow, or a person, whatever. Try looking directly at them, and you won't be able to tell. You won't be able to discern anything about them. To combat this, you can just try kind of like staring off to the side or like at the edge of the object, and things will come back into focus a little bit, enough to at least be able to see and discern what the object is.
And the main thing with that is focusing on different things when you're doing that. So when you're looking at the periphery, at the corners of whatever object, right? You're looking slightly off to it. Only look at those a few seconds at a time, and then shift your focus again.
Right.
Shift your gaze again, and that's going to stop you from bleaching out, and you'll be able to get a better idea of what's going on.
And really, the key to maneuvering to scanning at night, if you don't have the ability to have something like a night optical device, NOD, use your peripheral vision, because you can see movement. Your depth perception is a little bit better if you're just using your peripheral vision to scan.
So when you're traveling at night, if you do not have a way to see in the dark, a night vision device, thermals, what have you, you're going to have to rely on your natural vision. So that looks like you're looking out, especially for movement. Your eyes are designed to catch that. And then as far as your periphery goes, letting your vision drift from focus. So not trying to focus on any one thing, just kind of letting your eyes rest a little bit, and they'll naturally pick up on the peripheral of your vision. They'll pick everything out. That's what they're designed for. But to your point, it is very difficult to operate at night. So that's why a lot of guys, if they do not have night vision, they kind of their SOP is to bed down and pull security. If you're in a situation where you have to be doing soldiering tasks, right? Because it's not worth it. If your enemy, if your adversary has night vision, it's more of a detriment to be moving around, because you're going to be loud, you're going to be busting your butt everywhere, and you're not going to be able to see them before they can see you.
Yeah, and kind of like how in daylight, deer use, they can't discern a predator, they can't discern a hunter based solely on looking at it. They mainly rely on movements. They mainly rely on extreme color differences. In the same way at night, that's what we rely on. You can see movement so much better at night than you can like just looking at something and being able to tell that something's off. Like if something moves at night, you can see it almost immediately. Something's there, something's not nature, or something's not like a tree, something's not like a static object. Something's there, and that could be someone moving, that could be a deer, that could be an animal, that could be an RPG coming at your face. You don't know.
As far as bedding down for night, the standing orders for Rogers Rangers, number 15 was "Don't sleep beyond dawn. Dawn's when the French and Indians attack."
You know why that is?
Well, yeah, I know why that is. We just talked about it. Yeah, I do know why that is. So, at dusk, at dawn, okay, your eyes are shifting between that daylight focus and that nighttime focus. So, your eyes are more fatigued, shifting between trying to catch the available light and trying to shift to sun up to sundown. It's constantly changing. It's very rapid, and it's very fatiguing on your eyes. So that's why historically a lot of battles, a lot of raids are fought during this time, because the attacker has that advantage. So different factors that affect observation, looking in, identifying targets are shape. So your past experience, your mental database help you associate what an object is with its shape or its outline. So like I was talking about earlier with, if I don't have my glasses, I can still tell what something is because I've I call back on that experience subconsciously, so I can associate, if something is a pen or a water bottle, when really I just see a blur. Shadow. So in sunlight, a shadow cast by a person or an object can give away their position. So pretty sure everyone's played that game on IG, Spot the Sniper. So if someone is hiding behind a tree, for an example, and sunlight is coming from either side of the tree and casts a shadow on the ground, you'll be able to see the shadow of the tree and the shadow of, the person hiding behind it. Shadow can give a lot of away. It can also help with, determining what type of day it is. Silhouette. So silhouette contrasts an object from the surrounding environment. So an easy way to explain this is what we used to call silhouetting. So if you're performing a movement and you're standing on top of a ridgeline or on top of a hill or a mountain, someone will be able to see your silhouette. A lot of animals are extremely good at adapting and blending into their environment. So instead of looking for a specific color, you have to look out for their shape instead. Surface. So contrasting the object's surface, with the with the surrounding environment. So anytime that you drop your phone and you look for it on the ground, you see that if you drop it on grass, you see the color difference. You see the smoothness as opposed to the roughness or waviness of the ground. Spacing. So rows in equal spacing they don't happen naturally. So that is a person. So used to be SOP for a while that if you were stranded, that you would set 3 fires equal spacing out, across whatever, if you were on a beach or, on a mountainside, because patterns like that, spacing like that, the symmetry doesn't happen naturally. Anomalies. We spoke of this, anything that contrasts, anything that doesn't belong. Color. That's why, if you're actually trying to hide from something, you shouldn't wear neon orange in the forest. And movement, what Six was talking about. At night, your eyes are designed to pick up movement. That's a real big gigger if guys are going through the ghillie portion of the sniper school, right? So if they move against their environment and they move a bush or the grass, or something moves that shouldn't, or it moves in a way that it shouldn't, then that's a dead giveaway.
That's also why they teach you to move very, very slowly and deliberately, and even better if you can do it with the wind, because if the wind is blowing foliage, it's a lot easier. You can move just a little bit quicker, not very much quicker, but enough to where it looks like it's natural.
So moving on, another consideration is positive, negative, and dead spaces. So positive space is a solid object, something that takes up mass. The eyes naturally jump from positive space to positive space. So if you're looking down a city street, your eyes are naturally going to jump to the car, the street lamp, the building, the cart. Negative space is the space between those positive spaces. So anything that is not solid, anything that doesn't have mass. So that can include, the alleyways between buildings. That can include windows if they're open. And dead space, anything that you cannot see. So what is inside a building, what is behind a car, what is behind trees, a terrain feature, anything that you can't readily observe in your area that someone could potentially observe you from. All right. So, Six, do you want to talk about or bring us into sound?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as sound goes, we have a real world example of a time when sound and hearing have been used to save lives. I'm going to take you back probably about a decade. At 8:46 in the morning on September 11th, 2001, the first plane impacted the World Trade Center. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember that, but personally, I was in school at the time, and I can remember the TV getting flipped on and seeing the devastation of the North Tower being just engulfed in smoke, black smoke. And if I was watching it, I knew that there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Manhattan, in lower Manhattan, watching the same thing. And it turns out there were. There were thousands of people, hundreds of first responders flooding into the area, looking at it and trying to see what's going on, trying to make sense of what just happened. But little did they know, a little over an hour later, that both the North Tower and South Tower would come down. And when they did, they spewed just a gigantic plume, a rolling cloud of dust, debris, body parts, jet fuel, pulverized concrete, building material, plastics that have been burned, glass, fibers from like hair products, all sorts of things. This stuff got spewed into the air. It got into people's eyes and their nose and their mouth. So these people were all standing around in the path of this dust cloud that was rolling through, almost like a gigantic, if you've ever seen it, a gigantic like dust cloud rolling through the Arabian desert. Like these things are miles high, but these people were trying to escape this dust cloud in lower Manhattan. And all they had to go on was their sense of hearing and their sense of touch. And sense of touch was fine. It'd be like people grabbing each other and like guiding each other to safety. But the hearing was the key thing, especially when they couldn't see, couldn't smell, couldn't taste. They could hear car alarms going off. They could hear people calling out from buildings, from people who were stationary trying to get help. They could hear dogs barking. They could hear sirens going off. But they used their sense of hearing to navigate away from ground zero, away from this dust cloud, away from all this toxicity that had been spewed in the air. And we know it was toxic because of reports that came out. Like there wasn't asbestos, but there was plenty of other stuff that was extremely toxic to the human body in it. But getting back to sense of sound, they used their hearing to navigate into buildings, into safety, away from where first responders were still flooding in. That's just an example of how powerful the sense of hearing, the sense of how powerful sound is, especially as it regards to situational awareness and saving lives. So when we talk about this, we're talking about it's mainly about the human body's ability to detect sound. We just have some other examples of how far something can travel. And I get that this is in kilometers, but, Google Translate that. So if you're reloading a magazine, you can hear that up to almost 500 meters away. That's a long distance. Think about that. Think about the distance that covers. If you're yelling at someone.
So for people who don't want to do the math, a kilometer is just over half a mile. So if you're looking on your speedometer when you're driving, when you're speeding in the left lane, because the left lane is for crime, the little number, underneath the big number is your kilometers. So it's about double.
Now, speaking of motor vehicles, if you're traveling on a highway, you can hear that up to a kilometer away. Like that's a good distance. I mean, think about that. How far out can you hear an ambulance, a fire truck, a police car coming, or even going? Like, I get that the pitch changes.
You'll hear it before you see it.
But still, it's a good freaking distance out there. And you can just hear that stuff. So your sound signature will travel before you. As far as detection goes as well, you can detect the exact opposite as well. So a lack of ambient sound, lack of birds chirping, a lack of mechanical sounds, that's a good indicator of a physical presence, a person being there. Like, if animals detect danger, they're going to leave. And what you have is just a cavity, a vacuum of sound. Like there's nothing there. And that alone, if you've ever seen the movies, it instantly like puts off a red flag in somebody's brain. Like something's up. I need to be paying attention.
So I actually have two examples of that from a movie, actually. So The Bourne Identity displayed this perfectly, in my opinion. So Jason Bourne and Mary, his partner, they are going out to a house in the country. Okay. They go and stay with Mary's friend, and turns out that they were pursued by another assassin. Bourne does a couple things here. Situational awareness is pretty much his superpower, but two things he does. At one point, the family is trying to leave, and so they call their family dog, and the dog doesn't come. So that ticks off a red flag in Bourne's mind, and he says, "Hey, you guys need to get in the basement." To him, that was enough evidence to warrant suspicion and to warrant action. Okay, specifically for Sound, when he goes to confront his adversary, amongst other things of hiding his presence, like blowing up the propane tank, and the sniper goes and he gets the sound signature, so he looks at the propane tank that blew up, sends up a plume of smoke, hides Bourne's presence so he can go and flank the enemy, right? Who he believes is hiding in the field. He gets to the field, he shoots a shotgun in the air. This frightens the birds that are in the field. The birds fly up, and as he's moving around the outskirts of the field, the birds do not settle back down. So he knows that the sniper is hiding in the field. A couple takeaways from that, like you said, in the environment, if someone makes an unnatural sound, okay, that's going to alert, prey animals in nature. So fired the shotgun, birds got scared, birds flew off. Also, the bird's presence, the fact that they didn't settle in the field was, evidence enough for him to, go off and close that distance and kill the sniper.
So using that as an example, Bourne listened with intent to ID and categorize every sound that he heard. And that allowed him to make snap good judgments about what he should do in those instances. And that's something that everyone else can learn how to do if you really want to.
When we get into weapons familiarization, we'll actually play audio clips of different weapons firing so that people can throw that in their database to use later. So you can listen to the report of a rifle and you can get a general idea of what's going on. You might not be able to tell the caliber, but you can tell, okay, that's a handgun, that's a rifle, that's an automatic rifle, right? Oh crap, that's 50. But also with sound, with enough experience, you'll be able to judge that distance to a certain degree, right? So anyone can say, oh, that sound's coming closer, but with enough immersion, with enough practice, you can be like, oh, okay, that was a couple clicks that way, or oh, that's a couple hundred meters that way.
Sound can also travel farther over water. That mainly happens because there's no obstacles in the way to slow down sound. Yes, water absorbs some of it, but if it's going straight out and it doesn't hit a wave, it's going to keep going. It's going to keep going until that sound wave loses enough energy to where it dissipates. So, hey, Seven, take us into smell.
Right. Sense of smell. Your sense of smell enables you to make the distinction, get direction, and basic status of different odors in your environment. Okay, what I mean by that, your sense of smell is not as acute as an animal. So, like a tracking dog, you'll never be able to do what they can do. But you can get the basic gist, the basic status of what's going on. This is important when we're talking about, like tracking or during movement, a lot of soldiering stuff, because you'll be able to pick out the anomalies, what's not supposed to be there. So, say something pretty innocuous like hiking. Okay, if you're hiking and you're going for a while and you kind of come to the realization that you don't really hear any animals anymore, and there's kind of a faint glow on the horizon, you're starting to smell smoke, that should put off some red flags. As far as soldiering goes, you're going to be able to smell cigarette smoke, aftershave, soap, insect repellent, a cooking fire. Okay, all of these are potentially evidence to human presence.
Unless you're dealing with like flowers, if you smell something good like aftershave or cologne or deodorant or even bug spray, it doesn't belong there. Somebody's there. Or even something bad like cigarette smoke or cigar smoke, that's a good indicator that somebody's there.
So, sense of touch, often overlooked because it's so integral to how we go about life. Your sense of touch is comprised mainly of 4 sensations: heat, cold, pressure, and pain. So heat and cold, pretty self-explanatory. Pain rolls into that. Pain is the body's way of telling you that something is wrong, that you've damaged your body, and you can't ignore that because it needs to be fixed. So That's why a huge danger is frostbite. So if you're in cold weather conditions and you get frostbite, oh, yeah, well, my finger is black, but I can't feel it. It doesn't hurt. So
Yeah.
Your bodies are impossibly complex, but your sense of touch is very integral to a lot of things. So especially in low light conditions when you can't see, you'll be relying on your sense of touch a lot. So in the September 11th attacks, okay, people were crawling around the ground they couldn't see, so they had to rely on their sense of touch to figure out where, to traverse their environment. Okay, in the Army, we mainly operate in low light conditions, performing weapons manipulation, reloading, clearing malfunctions. All that was done with your sense of touch. Also, you can use your sense of touch to identify different objects if you can't look at them or if it's dark. Another good application would be putting the back of your hand to the side of to the face of a door to see if the other room is hot.
Because if you don't do that and you open that door, you could be straight up not having a good time.
All right, go ahead and I'm not going to tell you to do it. I'm going to tell you to taste something.
Taste the rainbow.
Actually, I will tell all of you, don't, whatever it is, if you have to ask, don't lick it.
Yeah. So we're going to roll into taste here. Smell and taste actually complement each other. Taste helps you determine if food is good, if it's bad, if it's edible, if it's poisonous, if it's been oversalted, if it's been undersalted. Temperature. Yeah, exactly.
Anyone who's in an MRE knows what we're talking about.
Oh my God. Yes. If you've ever eaten an MRE, chances are that thing is from the 80s and it's gone bad by over 10 years. Especially if you ate the Skittles. Those Skittles were like freaking mini jawbreakers. Like there weren't a lot of things in those MREs that were actually good. I do remember the pound cakes, the lemon cakes being really good. Dude, I remember like this. It wasn't like
First Strike bars.
Yeah, the First Strike bars. As long as they were under like 5 years old, they were fantastic. If they were over 5 years old, it was like trying to eat a chocolate version of stale beef jerky.
If anyone is listening right now who is still in the Army and you still like eat MREs, like the Southwest beef and bean, hoard all of the cheese packets you can. Okay, grab two things of crackers. Okay, empty out your MRE, fold it down to where it's a big bowl. Heat up the beef and bean. Okay, the Southwest beef and bean. Pour it in there. Crumble up the crackers. Heat up the cheese. Pour the cheese in there. Mix it up. You're welcome.
So let's get out of MREs. Let's actually get out of this.
Please.
We've covered the 5 senses, and I don't want to keep getting people's eyes glazed over.
Yeah, so this was our second episode on situational awareness. Like we said before, there's so much more we can go over and really do a deep dive into, but we want to focus on your senses because they're how you experience and interact with the world. So if we can focus in and kind of show you the hows and whys and capabilities, it gives you a different framework. I feel like it really broadens out the tools that you can go about your everyday life and no matter what you do. Next week, we're going to be talking about guerrilla warfare. We're doing our guerrilla warfare primer.
And we're going to be getting into the history of it. We're going to be expounding on what goes actually into guerrilla warfare. So like basic soldiering, networking, that kind of stuff. It's all encompassing. It's going to take us a few episodes for sure to cover everything that we want to talk about. So hope you join us for that.
Thanks for listening. Stay safe and be better. This was Hard Times, Strong Men.
Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Thanks, everybody.